Speaking in Normandy, President Biden outlined lessons from World War II to warn against bowing to dictators and isolating the U.S. in today's world. He hit common themes in his 2024 pitch, throughout which naming America's current rival without naming America's current rival. NTD's Iris Tao has more from today's D-Day commemoration in Normandy, France.
Right here near the beaches of Normandy, President Biden hails the fight for freedom as he commemorates the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, which turned the tide in World War II.
The battle between freedom and tyranny. The Allied forces of D-Day did their duty. Now the question for us is, in our hour of trial, will we do ours?
Biden gave a speech this morning at the Normandy American Cemetery, which is technically American soil, as the French gifted the land to the U.S. after the war. More than 70,000 U.S. troops joined the Allied forces for the daring D-Day operation, which, despite heavy casualties, marked the largest seaborne invasion in human history and paved the way for the Nazis' defeat in Europe. President Biden meeting with surviving veterans who fought in Normandy, most into the late 90s and some over 100. This could be the last major commemoration in which these veterans are alive to bear witness.
Let us be worthy of their sacrifice.
Biden also invoked common themes in his 2024 pitch, among which defending democracy.
We defend democracy. We stand together.
Bolstering NATO.
Isolationism was not the answer 80 years ago and is not the answer today.
And supporting Ukraine.
We will not walk away.
And on Friday, Biden will give another speech in Normandy, this time focused on freedom and democracy and targeting audiences at home in the U.S. In that speech, he's expected to contrast himself with his 2024 rival, former President Trump, and highlight the, quote, dangers of isolationism. And Biden over the weekend is also expected to meet with French President Emmanuel Macron in his first state visit to France as president. It all comes as revitalizing alliances remains a top agenda in Biden's 2024 campaign. Reporting from Normandy, France, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The Friends of the World War II Memorial held a commemorative service today in honor of the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the details.
Two World War II veterans and the surviving daughter of a U.S. serviceman who died in the beaches of Normandy 80 years ago were honored this Thursday at the National Mall. I spoke with U.S. Army Major Matt Visser as he reflected on today's anniversary. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Today was meaningful to reflect on how much was accomplished by the greatest generation, but also to reflect on how unified we are with our allies. There's really strong alliance. Important for me to be a part of today. I've served with the 101st and the 82nd Airborne Division, as well as 18th Airborne Corps.
The 101st Airborne Division is the U.S. Army unit that parachuted behind enemy lines on D-Day. Foreign delegations also placed wreath this Thursday at the National Mall in commemoration of the shared sacrifice with Allied troops.
Really makes you reflect about what the finest generation did for future generations and how we got together after the Second World War to make sure that something like this would never happen again. It's really a time to think about where we are, where we're going, and what the future generations left for us to take care of.
I also spoke with Vietnam War veteran John Moreland as he reflected on what D-Day and World War II meant for his generation.
Well, my dad was a World War II veteran, but just being here thinking after reading books on, the D-Day invasion and what this country did, it's honoring to me. You get chills, and anytime I ever hear, Star Spangled Banner or taps, it's hard to keep tears from getting in my eyes.
The Friends of the World War II Memorial read the list of the approximately 1,000 known U.S. service members who died on D-Day 80 years ago. It's also worth noting that at least 12 U.S. congressmen traveled to France and at least 8 U.S. congressmen who are military veterans parachuted into Normandy this Thursday. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
As President Biden joins world leaders in France to commemorate such a historic period in history, what can future generations learn from D-Day? And are we losing that spirit for freedom that once prevailed? Joining me to discuss this is Wade Miller, a U.S. Marine combat veteran and Executive Director of Citizens for Renewing America. Wade Miller, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
President Biden's in France joining President Macron and honoring D-Day, the veterans there as well. This was a day when Allied forces overthrew the Nazis. Talk a bit about the importance and the spirit of D-Day.
Yeah, you had tens of thousands of American GIs, Canadians, British as well. They were heading towards a beach with an uncertain future in front of them. They didn't know if they'd live throughout the day, and of course, thousands of them did not. And they were going there to fight literal tyranny, a force that was attempting to spread extreme evil around the globe. And we were fighting for Western civilization. And, you know, the United States kind of stayed out of it in the beginning, but when it was, you know, looked like it was necessary for our entry, the political dynamics shifted. The American public supported going in that direction. And so, you know, we honor this day because so many people put their lives on the line. They, you know, parents lost children, children lost fathers, wives lost husbands, and you know, so much of what could have been that never was because of that sacrifice. But their sacrifice was not, you know, largely in vain. Western civilization has largely prevailed. I think that we're now entering in a kind of a time and era where Western civilization is again at threat, and I don't think that most of those threats are external. I think a lot of them are internal. But they did give Western civilization the idea of liberty basically 80 years more lifeline, more, you know, 80 more years for people to live a mostly free life in large parts of the world.
I want to drill into now what you meant by the problems we're facing today. What can future generations and us today, what can we learn from D-Day, and how does it relate to our military readiness?
Sure. So, you know, there are still external threats to the United States and its interests. China is certainly a threat. You know, Russia, a lot of people think is a threat. I don't think that they're necessarily an ally. I don't think they're actually as much of a threat to Europe and the United States as many people like to think. But mostly what we're facing is an interior problem. We're seeing this in Europe as well, where they're embracing cultural Marxism. In fact, I just saw a viral YouTube video this morning, or maybe TikTok or Twitter or something like that. And it was a D-Day veteran. He's 100-something years old. And he was crying literally in tears because he doesn't know what he fought for because we're losing this country. And I think that we're seeing woke and weaponized government rise in the mainstream left. They're embracing institutional and systemic racism. They're to basically attack us. You know, this is through DEI initiatives and other things. They're using critical gender theory to attack, you know, the Christian family unit and make it seem bigoted to believe in the idea of a mother and a father and strong families and strong marriages. And they're elevating things like perversions of men at pride parades in underwear twerking in front of children. And I think that we're starting to face some real complications with that in terms of our constitutional system was set up and veterans have died to protect it with an understanding that you needed a certain type of culture for that system to work.
How did we get from D-Day to today where our culture seems to be eroding like this, and what can be done to fix it?
Sure. So on the backside of World War II, the United States had a large time frame of economic prosperity. And I think one of the problems that we ran into is that Republicans overcorrected and over-embraced the concepts of free markets and economic liberty. Not that those things are bad. Those things are good ideas for the most part. There's some limitations on that, and I can discuss that in a minute if you'd like. And then they forgot in their kind of rush to become a party of economic freedom, low regulations, low taxes, that we also have to defend our culture. In fact, large parts of the Republican Party don't want to defend culture. They don't want to talk about woke and weaponized issues. They don't want to talk about critical race theory. They think that they're tinfoil hat issues, when in reality, they're more important to the future of this country than even balancing the budget. So for instance, we could reform Social Security and Medicare tomorrow and balance the budget in 10 years. But we could also lose the country because we failed to actually defend our culture.
Wade Miller, thank you very much for your insight here today.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.